So, Don, I have received some interesting pictures from you. On one of those pictures, we can find footprints that maybe comes from the Dogman. Tell me something about the history of the Dogman at first, please. What's the origin of the Dogman?
Well, based on my limited research, because I do more investigations into the existence of what I refer to as the Sasquatch people. I happened to meet another researcher about 4 or 5 years ago who was into Dogman research quite intensively. Like me, he had his theories about the origin of Dogman. I've come to the conclusion it's a hybrid, or in some people refer to it as a chimera creature, meaning it has several genetic traits from possibly different animals. With the dog man, he's determined there's elements of cat-like or feline characteristics mixed with canine or dog characteristics, possibly reminds many of the witnesses of a hyena. Hyena being having both canine and cat characteristics, and yet acts totally different than a canine or a cat would act. They're social, but their structure is different. The matriarch runs the pack, the hyena pack, unlike lions, where it's the patriarch or it's the alpha male who runs the pride. So, in that respect, I came across the Dogman prints that I was able to cast with plaster as a result of another person who I actually sent you a picture of her in one of my. She's standing next to a Sasquatch structure. She actually came across these prints in a park not far from where I live, and my friend, who's the Dogman researcher, sent me there to cast them. And I came to the conclusion it was unlike any wolf print, dog print. I could not come up with an understanding, or I guess you'd say a framework, that I could say this is the known creatures that could have created this print. I went through all the knowns and I came up with a blank. So I came to the conclusion that there was something going on that I'm unfamiliar with. And my fellow researcher, Ricky, he explained his research going back further than mine regarding Dogman. He used to live in Wisconsin near a swampy area called Horicon Swamp. I would believe that's in northeast central Wisconsin, and he has seen dogmen. He has described them, and in one incident, him and another teammate of mine came across two dogmen. And the second teammate, Dave, he went ahead. He's an artist, and he drew a sketch of that dogman, and I sent you that sketch. The dogman was partially hidden behind a tree. At least part of its face or head was. They saw a second creature coming through the reed bed along the river, and it had stuck its head out in what I call phragmites. It's a very tall weed that grows in this part of the Midwest along riverbanks and lakes, and they can grow as high as 10 to 11 feet tall. This thing made its way through that reed bed, and believe that the second one, they were communicating with each other, and my two teammates, they happened to see both of them at about the same time. And so that's the sketch I sent you that Dave drew. So roll ahead to about 2.5 years ago. I want to say 2019, the beginning of 2020. And that's when I got the contact from Ricky that a girl that we had done excursions with had seen prints that she could not explain and sent me a picture of those prints. And so then I went ahead and I casted them. My conclusions regarding what Dogman originates in your previous question, I think they were a created hybrid going back tens of thousands of years ago. It might blow your listeners' minds, but I've come to the conclusion the Atlantean civilization, which was an advanced civilization, had created through genetic modification several chimera species. And you could see this represented in Greek mythology, Nordic mythology, even Native American legends. These creatures that are chimera creatures, you even see it in the Egyptian Sphinx, the head of a lion, wings of a bird, of an eagle, and that has been changed, I know, over hundreds of years, the facial characteristics of the Sphinx. There's been many representations, but in the Atlantean information, they were creating chimera creatures, their scientists were, and I believe they were more advanced than we are today, technology-wise. And this is based again on the Meyer information about the Atlanteans who emigrated from their planet, at least these group of people did, to colonize what is known as Greater Atlantis 130,000 years ago. And so that's my take on what I suspect are the origins of Dogman and potentially even Bigfoot. So that's my long answer.
Can the Dogman communicate? Does it make sounds or perhaps some kind of language?
I've had many discussions about this with one of my team members, one of my colleagues, another researcher, and we've come to the conclusion we don't believe it has language as far as similarities to human language or pre-language as primitive men had, our primitive ancestors had. There are a lot of sounds that they use to communicate, just like other animals in the animal kingdom. We've recorded clicks, sometimes confused with the clicking sounds that, if you ever heard of the Kalahari Bushmen, they make a clicking sound with their mouth. You'll hear that, and it'll happen. And we've recorded it in the forest where we've camped. My fellow researcher, who's really into Dogman research more than anything, he's come to it's more of an opinion that when Bigfoot come into the area, the clicking noise by Dogman is an alert or warning that Bigfoot are coming in, for them to either not be seen, to leave the area, or at least basically conceal themselves from being seen. We've seen them. I haven't seen them personally, but I've seen evidence of them being around. And the prints I casted showed an anomaly that I don't see in canine prints. He came to that conclusion also, that they are upright walking, but they are just as comfortable on all fours quadrupedally. And he came to the conclusion, and I have to agree with him on some of it, because they have been seen by eyewitnesses walking upright, and they have been seen on all four. And all fours, they look like a huge, in some cases, a wolf, or and there's a variation in the species where they have heads that look like German shepherds, wolves, Doberman pinschers, pit bulls, and various other canine-like animals. There's even one called the fox man, which is a smaller variety of dogmen that have a fox-like head and even body and bushy tail. But the one we saw in Wisconsin, well, I didn't see, but Dave saw, we estimated around 6.5 feet tall. He saw it with his naked eye, and he saw it through a night vision camera, and he was able to see it quite clearly. It showed blue eye shine. We were on a night investigation. We all had night vision, and there was 4 of us, and it came up in a spot behind all 4 of us where we didn't have a man basically there for surveillance. So it was able to find our open or blind spot and came right in. And my friend happened to look to his left, and he looked through his night vision goggle, and he saw its face standing, I want to say not even 40, about 40 to maybe 35 feet from where he was sitting. And then when he took the night vision away, he could clearly see its mouth was open, and he could see its teeth, and he could see I believe one or both eyes. I remember him telling me about it. And so then when he contacted all of us in the group that night, within minutes, we went to that spot and we did a comparison to determine height. I stood right in the spot where he saw it, and I raised my hand and I said, Dave, how tall was he? Tell me when I get to the height you think he was, tell me to stop. And he estimated it was about a little over 6 foot to 6.5 feet in height. So it wasn't really big, it wasn't gigantic. And he was under the impression wasn't standing straight up either. So it might have been even taller.
Are there any reports of people being attacked by these creatures?
There are on some of the media platforms, Rumble, YouTube,
Hmm.
even Facebook, to generate sort of an entertainment quality. None of the eyewitnesses are telling you what preceded the attack or the aggressiveness that happened. And that's where I've teamed up with Ricky, I call him, because he finds out more about the backstory regarding the eyewitnesses. He finds out that a lot of these things happen when people will buy a property. They'll go into a section of woods where Dogman has been there before the family maybe moved in and started clearing the area, the tract of land, by cutting down lumber, cutting down trees. So then it creates sort of this negative aspect. So as a result, it launched generally hundreds of channels that are just talking about Dogman chased me, Dogman almost killed me, Dogman did this. And it's great entertainment value, but it's not the reality. My teammate's been surrounded by Dogman. I've been there when they snuck into camp. Didn't see him, but my friend saw him. I've collected prints to show the evidence of them being in an area that I walk frequently. Here's one of them right here. Yeah, I just happen to have them here on hand. But what was really unusual about these, and it was identified immediately by the guy in my group that does Dogman research, was right here. You see this structure here, this anomalous structure? And then here's the forepaw. And then here's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 digits. Wolves don't show 5 digits when they walk. They only show 5, 4, just like a dog. So there's 5 digits, what we would call a thumb, and then this structure here. So I did research on that to find out what that structure was. And in cats, house cat, it's called a carpal pad. A carpal pad, which is usually on a cat, it's halfway up its forearms and it's only on its front paws or legs. They'll have a structure right up here. But on these prints, the structure is closer to the forepaw, right up here. I've never seen that in canines and dogs. I've had dogs all my life. I've had at one point 13 dogs that I was raising from pups. But I never saw that structure on any dog. And the ones I examined on cats are in the wrong location. So to me, it created if you want to call it a mystery, something that I had to determine what was going on here. And I have another one here, might show the structure more clearly. The thumb-like digit and the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it looks more like a hand. And when I asked my fellow researcher, who was surrounded by, I think there were 5 individuals that crossed into his yard. And this was, I believe, during daylight hours, might have been before sunset. And he's a dog behaviorist, and he had his dogs in the kennel. And his dog started acting up, so he went outside to see what was going on. And these dogmen came into his yard and basically circled him. And they raised up and they were on their hind legs, walking in a circle around him. And he basically, because of his abilities as a dog behaviorist, and he trains dogs for a living and still does, he sort of exerted that dominant aspect, like I'm in charge here. You're on my yard. You're gonna, he says, you're gonna have to leave because this is my property. But he was sort of showing that physical sort of confidence. He reminds me a little of Caesar Milan, the dog whisperer. He has that sort of ability with dogs. And he said, if it wasn't for that, he says, things could have gone bad. So he described their feet and their paws for me, their front paws and their feet. And he says, your rear legs have paws that look like this. Now the front legs or paws are more raccoon-like. Their fingers and what we would call their thumb are more raccoon-like. He's seen them close up. I haven't been able, but again, it's an anomaly. It's sort of, when I'm out there researching Bigfoot, I come across these strange things like these type of prints. We talked about it, he says, generally, if Bigfoot are in the area, the habitat is perfect for Dogman also. So Dogman will be there also. So he says you generally can't have one without the other. In a balanced environment, if you have wolves, cougars, and black bear, generally you'll have coyotes also. They sort of, one does not come without the other. So this is, again, my opinion. I have some confirmation that they're there, but I don't have 100% proof. I always say alleged dogman, potential dogman, because I don't, even though Ricky has seen them and Dave has seen them, two guys I do work with, I haven't seen them. So I have to still put a question mark on that. I have to be somewhat skeptical.
Have dwellings been found in which such an animal could have stayed? Or housings or caves or I don't know.
Yeah, we come to the conclusion that they don't build structures or dwellings or anything like that. They seem to burrow, or like if people have cleared their property of trees and brush and thickets, and they'll usually, with a tractor, they'll push it all into a giant pile. They have found dogman burrowed into these giant piles of wood, of trees, and that have been pushed over and sort of to clear a section of land, that they'll occupy that they're opportunistic. They'll take advantage of that. Also, trees that have fallen over. I've come across giant root balls, which is a tree will fall over. The tree may be 1 to 2.5, 3 feet in diameter, and you'll have a giant root ball that might be 12 feet wide by 8 feet tall. And under the root ball, it'll be dug out like a burrow. And I know coyotes and foxes will use those areas as a burrow, as a place to have their cubs. And Ricky's he's talked to eyewitnesses that have claimed they have found these type of burrows where they're living under a root ball, or they have dug a hole into the side of a hill, and it's you'd have to get down on all fours as a human being to crawl into these structures or into these burrows. He also has talked about them also occupying areas that have been abandoned, like old homes or old buildings that have been abandoned. In one instance, they went into a building. I was not with them, but 3 of my team members went into an area where there was a building that was abandoned. They believe they scared a dog man out of it to the other exit, and it ran so fast they couldn't. It was just a blur of motion. They believe it was a dog man. They don't have pictures. It was just a personal experience of what they heard, what they saw. So it raises a lot of questions. I don't. I'm still trying to sort of sort it out in my own mind. The existence of dogman. I'm not saying that they don't exist. I just don't have proof enough to prove absolutely they exist, other than the casts. I even have a third cast here, which is of a sub-adult, or one that's a little smaller than the other one. The other two I showed you, I think, was from the same creature. This one is a little smaller. Again, the pronounced carpal pad behind the forepaw. which you don't see that structure, you don't see even on dogs. So yeah, it was pretty interesting to say the least.
Any idea what their diet looks like? What they feed on? Do they hunt?
I believe they'll eat anything. I think they're omnivorous, just like bears and even wolves and foxes. They're omnivorous, meaning they'll have meat in their diet, and they also have vegetation, wild grapes, wild apples, raspberries, blueberries, and anything that's carrion, any animals that have been hit by cars on the highway. We believe that they'll take those dead animals. I think they're opportunistic, and they'll take those dead animals, use them as a food source. I don't think it's beyond them taking farm animals, chickens, possibly even other small dogs. I believe that they'll take advantage of that. Very similar to how Bigfoot are. Bigfoot will eat just about anything that's available, especially if they're in a situation where they haven't eaten in days or weeks and they're starving. Just like coyotes will take domestic cats and dogs. And my friend who has an exotic game farm has lost some of his hogs, some of his birds, his poultry, his chickens, and his ducks. And we don't believe it's all coyotes doing this, because some of the hogs he had taken were on the 200 to 400 pound weight. That's how heavy they were. So we didn't believe a coyote just. It was like picked up and just picked up and taken, like something stepped over the fence and just took it. Now I think we're talking about Bigfoot here, but I can't be 100%. I think dogmen are definitely on the radar. A lot of people in the Bigfoot community, they believe in Bigfoot, but they can't accept that a dogman would exist. To me, I believe it lives in the same environment, eats a lot of the same things Bigfoot does, not always coexist peacefully with Bigfoot. I think sometimes there is that coexistence. I come to the conclusion that when I'm familiar with a lot of the Bigfoot vocalizations and calls, but I've heard some other vocalizations that sounds like a wolf that weighs 300 pounds. Like it's a wolf that's like deep and bassy, a very bass vocalization. My other research partner, when he hears it and he's been with me, he says that's Dogman vocalizing, because it'll vocalize and then all the coyotes will go quiet. And it's almost like we'll hear the coyotes at nighttime, all together in unison, yipping and howling. And then you'll hear this big, like, wolf howl erupt out of nowhere, and the coyotes go quiet. I live in Illinois, and DNR, Department of Natural Resources, says wolves don't, they might pass through Illinois, but they don't exist here. I'm here to tell you, I believe wolves do live in Illinois. I don't trust what the government tells me, because they don't tell the truth. And they're not going to scare farmers and people that have homes in the country with the possibility that wolves are running around in the forest near where you live. So I believe wolves are out there. And I've heard wolf howls. I used to live in New Mexico. So I've heard wolves howl. And this didn't sound like, this sounded like a mega wolf, like a wolf that you might hear from back in the day, like in the Jurassic time when wolves were big and they were what I call megafauna. So when I hear those vocalizations, I don't know. I just don't know what's going on.
That's crazy and very interesting. But my last question would be, is Dogman's search and research as intense as Bigfoot's?
No, it hasn't been going on as long. There are a few serious researchers and investigators out there. They're taken with less credibility by science, by the scientific community. I mean, let's be frank and honest. The scientific community is still having I'd say 99% of the scientific community is still not open or accepting toward the possibility of an unknown hominid named Bigfoot existing. So they're going to be giving you more pushback the minute you bring a Dogman in. And to me, Dogman, that name, unfortunately, it's an incorrect name. You're trying to describe a creature that's walking upright, so you throw man in the name and say Dogman. I think it's an unknown species. I don't necessarily believe there's any kind of human DNA in this creature. They just like to throw Dogman, use that as a title because it walks upright, which to me is incorrect, and it's misleading. I don't think it's man-like at all. From the descriptions I've listened to, and by Ricky's encounters, he's seen them multiple times, and he told me, he says, "There's nothing." He hates the name Dogman. I do too. I wish they came up with a name like they did with the Tasmanian tiger, the thylacine, and had some kind of name where they could sort of put it in the corner and say, "Well, this is an unknown," like the hyenodont from primitive times, an unknown hyena that survived and is not necessarily extinct. And I proposed this theory to my friends and I said, what if this is an unknown hyenodont, an unknown descendant of the ancestor of hyenas, and it still lives to this day? Scientists are so quick to name a species extinct, but nobody's out there seriously looking to see if it is truly extinct. I cite the example of the coelacanth that they brought up from the depths of, I think, the Mariana Trench or whatever. Heck, before I was in grade school, they were saying the coelacanth was an extinct species, and it was represented in the fossil, and as a fossil in your museums. When now they're finding out it still exists. So I don't accept everything science throws at you. I don't believe they're thorough enough. It's easy to. I haven't seen that particular species. Science will say in 20 or 30 years, so we're just going to write it off as extinct, and they do this quite a bit.
I was very curious because we don't hear a lot about the Dogman over here. In fact, we don't hear nothing about the Dogman over here. The same with Bigfoot, but Bigfoot is all over the media. But we don't hear a lot about Dogman, unfortunately. But I find it very interesting. Dogman story. There's more to the Dogman story than I imagined, to be honest. I knew that you guys over there have more or deeper informations about the Dogman, but I did not know that the search for Dogman is almost similar to Bigfoot's search and traces of him. I never heard about the footprints, to be honest. It was the first time I heard about footprints from Dogman. Yeah, when I heard it from you, when you sent me those pictures. Very interesting. Have other guys found footprints of a Dogman, or are yours the only ones? Yeah,
No, I'm not the only one. Other people have taken pictures or images of Dogman footprints, and I know there are some people that have casted them. The cast, I'm sure, are out there somewhere. Pictures of those casts are out there on the internet, but I've only heard of a couple people other than myself that have casted Dogman footprints. And I've seen images of ones that are much bigger than mine. We're talking in the 15 to 16-inch length range, which is approaching 1.5 feet in length. Mine aren't that big. Mine are, I think, 9.5 to 10 inches in length, which isn't that. But for a wolf, if you're looking at a paw print of a wolf, that's a long print for a wolf.
Yes.
And the wolf doesn't display that heel impression I call the carpal pad. I think some of the Dogman researchers that are popping up were initially researching Bigfoot, like me, and they happened to see something that did not fit in to the framework of what a Bigfoot is or what a Sasquatch is. So they realized they were seeing something or evidence of something totally different that was canine and even feline. I mean, it has cat-like characteristics. They climb trees. Eyewitnesses have seen them in trees. I mean, they do some things that are very feline or cat-like. I always wonder, is there fox genetics? Because foxes which are canine and they're connected to the canine family, are also cat-like. Foxes can retract their claws, whereas all your other canine species can't. So a fox is sort of a weird animal in and of itself. I don't know. I've come to the conclusion that I don't know everything. I can just keep researching. Hopefully, I'll uncover something that's will change people's mind, at least change my mind. And I've come to the conclusion that we don't know all the species on the landmass like we think we do. I mean, you can look at the oceans and realize that we only know 2 or 3% of all the species that inhabit the oceans. Well, if you take all the land masses in the world and apply that, we may know maybe 20 to 30 to 40% of the species that exist in the rainforest, the Amazon rainforest, the Congo Delta. But even North America, I think we're scratching the surface to some degree because there are land forests in the Northwest and up in Canada that a person hasn't been in those areas for over hundreds of years. So we have no clue of what's inhabiting those areas. I welcome not just the agreements, but I welcome all the disagreeing
Mhm.
because the disagreeing is how you find a path to discovery.
Yes.
As people just question my opinions or my conclusions, they actually raise new avenues of approach for me to approach the subject matter differently and say, you know what, I never thought about that. Even though I question everything I come across, sometimes I don't have the right questions that push me into discovery. Even though my fellow researchers have convincing arguments and have had personal encounters of seeing Dogman, I have not seen him yet with my eyes, even though I have seen Bigfoot. So I have to consider that not everybody is lying to me, that there must be an element of truth to what they're telling me. And one of the gentlemen I refer to as Ricardo, he's a close friend of mine, and I have to look back at his history of our friendship. He may make mistakes like we all do, but he has never purposefully lied to me or actually misrepresented the truth. If he doesn't know something, he doesn't make it up. He just tells me, I don't know. And I wish more people would do that. I think that's the basis for true science. True scientific inquiry comes with, if I don't know, I'll admit it, and then, but yet I'm going to find out. Maybe I can find out and then say, I know for now, this seems to be the truth. And then from that truth, you discover more behind it, why you feel it's the truth. You discover the underpinnings. I was told, hey, you're the only one that has casted prints of Dogman. And I found out there are some people out there that also have them. I did a video and put it up on my channel. The title of that video is Canine-like Prints Discovered, or Canine Prints Casted of an Unknown, or I think it was something like that, Canine Prints of an Unknown Canine. And I put that was a video of me basically explaining the cast that I just showed you, because I was at a loss to really, I wasn't just about to tell people, oh, these are Dogman casts, because I have no proof of that, other than it's an unknown. I've had people challenge me on that, and I said, I never seen a print like that. And that's what I do is I do 40 years I've been tracking, understanding the fauna in all the various forests around the United States and what leaves those particular prints, from raccoons, opossums, fox, domestic dogs, wolves, bears. And I might not be an expert, but I think I'm pretty well educated in determining where that particular print would have come from. This left a big question mark in my mind. And so it interested me because I found it in an area where I do Bigfoot research. And I found Bigfoot structures. I've had Bigfoot vocalizations. Not far from there, I guess you would say I was bluff charged by a Bigfoot that didn't want me there. A year and a half, 2 years later, I find Dogman prints in that same area. So that surprised me. And you're talking about in Europe, people are saying that maybe it's not a subject of interest, or I should say, people aren't familiar with the Dogman in Europe. But yet, one of the most important eyewitnesses that have come forward in on the planet so far has been a woman from Croatia who's had a bad encounter when she was 14 years old and was put in the hospital by a dog man. She had a bad encounter, was hurt badly, and it was because just like with black bear, you see a black bear, you mistake it for your dog, and you approach it and get too close, and then you realize it's a big bear, and you turn around and you start to run away from it. She did that with a dog man, and it basically ran her down and it threw her around like a little rag doll, beat her up pretty badly, and now here it is years later. She has her own family. She has children and a husband, and she still sees these creatures, these dog men, in her part of Croatia. And she told her story to one of my team members, and he made contact with her and tried to help her through the trauma and said, "Well, they're just wild animals, and as long as you show respect and you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone." And I sincerely believe people don't understand that. They don't get that part. You know, if I see a wolf pack or a wolf or a cougar, I don't approach it. I don't run after it. I just leave it alone and let it do its thing. They're a predator. If you act like prey, they'll take you down like prey. So I always urge people, don't, like if you're in Africa, you see a lion, don't turn around and run from it. That's my understanding of if she's having these encounters in Europe, then who other there must be other people that are keeping these encounters secret and to themselves, and they are not divulging it because they're afraid of what their neighbors, what their coworkers will think, their family will think of them, and they're afraid of the ridicule.
It's the
And
same with the UFO topic or paranormal stuff. People are afraid to come forward because they, yeah, fear the ridicule, like you said.
it is. I mean, I think it's more so among family because people really don't tell their coworkers or their neighbors too much. They're going to probably tell their family first. But after experiencing maybe people mistreating you in the family because of something you witnessed, then you do realize, well, I can't go out in society and bring it up. Uh, I kept my secret about Bigfoot for almost 30 years before I finally decided to tell my family about it. I said, well, hey, I'm tired of keeping the secret. This is what happened to me in 1978, 1979. And that started the whole adventure for me.